Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Janice Lo. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. 2 men are stung by bees in separate incidents. One dies and the other is recovering. Leila de Lima, a staunch critic of former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte, is acquitted of a drug charge. And there's confusion and tension as thousands of migrants try to cross into the United States from Mexico. A man has died after being bitten by bees when he stepped on their nest while planting trees on Lantau. In another incident, a construction worker recovered after he was stung and shot in. In a rare incident, a man who was planting trees on Lantau was stung by bees this morning. After losing consciousness, Kwok Pui was airlifted by a government flying service helicopter to Eastern Hospital. The 64-year-old was pronounced dead after arrival. And 4 colleagues from the Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department were carrying out afforestation work at the Chimawan Country Trail. It appears that had stepped on a bee's nest. I saw bees chasing him and tried to fend them off, said one worker. Sources said lost consciousness 5 minutes after he was stung. It is believed that he had been suffering from high blood pressure for 4 years. The head of the Agriculture Department and the Civil Service Minister expressed their condolences to Ng's family and pledged to provide assistance. An emergency medicine specialist said death from a bee sting is extremely rare. Excelsior said if a person's blood pressure level is unstable, external factors would worsen the blood level or even lead to a stroke. In the second incident, a construction worker fell unconscious after his hand was stung and shot in this afternoon. The 33-year-old recovered before he was sent to Prince of Wales Hospital. Chief Executive John Lee says the government welcomes accurate criticism. This comes as a newspaper stops publishing cartoons by political satirist Sun Zi, whose books have been pulled out of the city's public libraries. Returning from a 3-day trip to Chongqing, the chief executive did not comment on the decision by the Chinese-language newspaper Mingpao to stop publishing cartoons by political satirist Sun Zi. John Lee said the government is criticized every day, but he emphasized that he would not tolerate inaccurate or misleading criticism or slander. Lee said a responsible media organization has to consider whether the information it provides meets society's expectations. He also believes that any person who has been unjustly criticized would clarify what is right. On the penultimate day of his work with Mingpao, Sun Zi took a dig at the revamped question and answer session in the Legislative Council and public libraries. A 3-panel comic strip suggested that lawmakers could turn to artificial intelligence chatbot ChatGPT for answers if they were unable to respond to the chief executive's questions during interactive meetings. Sun Zi also drew a picture of a single man yawning in a library, while across the street, people flocked to a bookshop named Book Removal. This comes as public libraries withdraw books deemed to be against the national security law. Sun Zi's books have also been removed, and a search of the library website found that none was available. Lee sidestepped questions on whether Sun Zi's books violated the national security law. But the chief executive said books that violated any law would not be lent to the public. Neither would books deemed to be obscene, indecent, or undesirable, adding that the government has the responsibility to review library books. Overseas, A court in the Philippines has acquitted former Senator Leila de Lima of a drug charge, but she remains in jail because of another case. The arch critic of former President Rodrigo Duterte maintains her innocence, saying she's the victim of a political vendetta. Sachin Kadri reports.
Supporters of former Senator Leila de Lima gathered outside a court in Manila to await the ruling. She was emotional when she emerged after being cleared of taking money from drug dealers when she was Justice Minister under then-President Benigno Aquino.
Answered prayers. It's a glorious day. This is the beginning of my vindication. May I say this to my oppressors? Crucify the truth.
63-year-old De Lima was acquitted after a key witness recanted his testimony. She has been jailed since 2017 for opposing former President Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs. Thousands of people, mainly poor Filipinos, were killed in the crackdown, which was denounced by several countries and human rights groups. De Lima has long insisted that she is innocent and that the charges were fabricated and politically motivated in retaliation for a condemnation of Duterte's policies. Despite the acquittal, De Lima will remain behind bars because she still faces one more case. She has applied for bail. Sachin Kadri, HKIBC.
Former Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has been granted bail after the Supreme Court ruled that his arrest earlier this week was unlawful. The 70-year-old was taken back to the High Court in Islamabad, the same court from which he was dramatically arrested by paramilitary forces on Tuesday. His bail has been set for 2 weeks, but the government said it's prepared to arrest him again. At least 10 people have been killed when tens of thousands of Khan's supporters protested across the country as the government tries to prosecute the cricket player turned politician on graft charges. The border between the United States and Mexico is in disarray as thousands of migrants are detained or turned away. Families with young children continue to risk their lives in a bid to enter the U.S., Imran Khan reports.
It's the dead of night in a risky area, but that isn't deterring migrant families from trying to cross the Rio Grande to reach Texas. U.S. soldiers look on from across a barbed fence and shout at the migrants to turn back, telling them it's too dangerous. But they carry on, some with their children on their shoulders. They rushed across ahead of the expiry of a pandemic-related asylum rule, known as Title 42. While Title 42 prevented many from seeking asylum, it carried no legal consequences, encouraging repeat attempts. That could now change under tougher rules. Misinformation and confusion distressed the migrants, often unsure where to go or what to do next. Most left their homelands to escape grinding poverty, hunger, crime, and corruption, among a host of hardships.
Mis papás no tenían cómo pagar, pues no.
Maria Jose Duran from Venezuela said she was a student, but when her parents couldn't afford to pay for anything anymore, she decided to leave, despite knowing that the journey would be difficult and treacherous. Other migrants have bigger problems. Some have been even threatened with death by drug cartels. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden was dealt a serious legal blow when a federal judge in Florida blocked his attempt to release migrants more quickly when holding stations are full. Migration along the southern U.S. border has been a contentious focal point for Republicans and Democrats in their political jousting. Imran Khan, HKIBC.
Russia has warned of a proportionate response after Britain confirmed that it has sent long-range cruise missiles to Ukraine.
Storm Shadow is a long-range, conventional-only precision strike capability. It complements the long-range systems already gifted, including HIMARS and Harpoon missiles, as well as Ukraine's own Neptune cruise missile. The use of Storm Shadow will allow Ukraine to push back Russian forces based within Ukrainian sovereign territory.
Britain's move came as Ukraine said it will need more time to launch a counter-offensive against Russian forces. The West has been pouring heavy weaponry into Ukraine, but President Volodymyr Zelensky says they're not enough. Back in Hong Kong, the government says the Basic Law does not state that district-level bodies have to be formed through elections. The statement came after a lawmaker expressed concern on whether appointed district councillors will speak out if their views differ from the government's. At the first meeting of a subcommittee scrutinizing the district council overhaul, the city's sole opposition lawmaker noted that Hong Kong is regressing when it comes to elected members.
民主成分同今日嚟講咧，新嘅方案咧係有較明顯嘅落差。
Tik Chi-yun pointed out that most members of the current councils were directly elected. But 40 years ago, appointees made up the majority. Tik said the public wants progress in direct elections. Most members of the new councils that will begin their term next year will either be picked by the chief executive or nominated by 3 committees in all 18 districts. Tik questioned if councillors would be able to reflect the public's views, even if the opinions differ from those of the government. In response, Constitutional Affairs Minister Eric Tsang said the Basic Law has not given specific instructions on the formation of municipal bodies.
從來冇提過必須係由呢個選舉產生。
The law never mentioned that the councils have to be formed through elections, let alone democratic factors, he said. Under the revamp, the councils will be chaired by district officers. Their assistants will fill the role in their absence. This worried Regina Ip, who wondered if the assistants would be able to handle the job because most of them are young. Home Affairs Secretary Alice Mack suggested that an officer from a neighboring district could take over in an acting capacity. The government has kept its economic growth forecast for the whole year at 3.5 to 5.5%. This comes after it confirmed that the economy in the first quarter grew by 2.7% from a year earlier, pulling the city out of recession.
Inbound tourism and domestic demand will remain the major drivers of economic growth this year. Visitor arrivals should recover further as transportation and handling capacity continue to catch up. The improving economic situation and prospects should boost domestic demand.
The distribution of consumption vouchers has also helped revitalize retail sales. On the downside, exports plummeted by almost 19% amid a challenging global environment. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index ended the day down 116 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tracker Fund was down 11 cents. Tencent was up $1.80, while Meituan was up $3.30. CCB was down 13 cents. China Mobile was down $1.10, while ICBC was down 9 cents. To the foreign exchange against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro is at 8.54, the pound's at 9.81, and the Australian dollar is at 5.23. Over in Europe, the London 100 is currently up 12 points. On to the weather now. Cloudy with a few showers and thunderstorms tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 23 and 26 degrees. The rain will continue as we head into next week. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Friday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Janice Lo. Good night.